Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddie Jones. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
And welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, along with my co-host, Eddie Jones. And we have a great week of Ducks hockey to get you caught up on. The Ducks had 3 games against Carolina, San Jose, and Ottawa. And they ended up winning all 3 this week. And they're now in first place in the Pacific Division. So you got to be extremely happy about that. We're going to go through and answer a series of fan questions as well, talk about some of the news with the team, and also, of course, look at next week coming up. But if we go back to the first game this week, Eddie, it was kind of a wild ride when Carolina came to town. The Ducks, they started out good in this game. Cognato got the first goal. But then after that, Carolina really, pushed it on to the Ducks. And it looked like Carolina was going to win this game. They were up 5-3 with, a little over half of the third period to go. But the Ducks were able to rally. They got 2 goals. In the final 4 minutes of the game to force overtime and then go to a shootout, which they won. So it was a good victory, Eddie, I guess, but not necessarily the way we wanted the team to play in this one.
Yeah, it was closer than you would have expected. Not that Carolina is bad; they're actually playing pretty well of late until that game. But Carolina was missing their best player in Jordan Staal, and you were expecting them to come out and play a better game than they did. Obviously, they got the win, so you can't complain, and finally won, after regulation, which is good. But, they scored first. It looked to go well. Obviously, Teravainen, you can't blame Gibson on that shot. It kind of was rolling. It went top corner. Can't really complain on that one. But, they came out in the second period and didn't really play good for the first half of that second period. They got scored on twice. And it was a disappointing start because you thought that from the first period, even getting scored on late, they were kind of controlling the play for most of the first, and they just kind of fell asleep for parts of the game, and they got victimized during the second period for doing that, and as well in the third. And for one of the first times this season, we saw them actually being able to fight back. They grabbed 2 goals within the last 4 minutes. Perry finally broke his slump. And they were able to win it, luckily, in a shootout, which is something we haven't seen this season. So it's nice to see them finally be able to close out a game, especially one that they didn't play too well in.
Yeah, exactly. The way that this game had started out, the first period seemed okay. And then the second period, oh my God, it was just terrible. So for them to come back and win this game, not play well, like you said, too, they finally won after going, into overtime. The Ducks had lost every time after regulation. Of course, we talk about the Islander game, and that's the sore spot where we know that the Ducks should have won that one. But it was good to see them win in this. Some other notes in here, too. Nason came up and played. He had his first goal this season with the Ducks, so that was fantastic. Some of the goals players have been playing really well, especially on the third and fourth line. Perry started getting hot. We'll talk about that this week. He actually got 2 goals in the last 3 games, which is good because we needed that. So some of the stuff that we talked about on the show last week, Eddie, the Ducks started doing in this game. They didn't play well defensively, obviously, but at least offensively, they started getting, everybody involved. Richie with the 6th. Like I said, Perry starting to get warmed up, and then, obviously the other goals players as well. So I think that was probably the positive in this game is that, A, they won a game after regulation, but B, the team offensively, more of the players were getting involved.
Yeah, and it was good to see we saw that in this game, and we'll talk about it in the Ottawa game too. We saw pretty much everybody get a point except for a couple forwards in that game as well. So it's good. It's good to see all the lines get involved. Obviously, Perry to finally break that slump and get one. You got goals from Richie and Vermette's line, and Richie getting his 6th, like you said. Kessler grabbed one, Nason grabbed one. So you're getting goals from pretty much every line in that one because Nason, Nason, Cramarosa, and Shaw were the 4th line in that game. So you got goals from each line, which was something that they really needed to get for probably one of the first times this season they got a goal from every line. And it was nice to see those guys go out there, and Nason, Cramarosa, and Garbutt play on that 4th line. They had a lot of energy. It was interesting to see them out there, and obviously, congrats to Nason for finally getting his first NHL goal. But yeah, it's something that we hope we can see from them now. In the beginning of the season, they were kind of struggling to score goals. They were relying on Getzlaf and Perry, and when they weren't on, we were hoping that Kessler, Silfverberg, and Cogliano could get some goals. But now that they seem to have that chemistry among at least the top three lines, we've seen the fourth line get some chemistry with the young guns playing on that line. But to have three set lines so far, it's nice to see them progress.
And another thing too in this game is what about Andre Casse in the shootout? I mean, he had an awesome one earlier. The Ducks were in the other one, but in this one he went with the same move, and I mean, you just have to be impressed with this guy. I mean, I really think that he's going to do well for this team. I mean, not just in the shootouts. I mean, obviously he's getting more and more points during the actual games, but I mean, what a move, and that proved to be the one that helped the Ducks win and get the 2 points in the shootout, Eddie.
Yeah, like you said, it was the exact same move he did before. So I don't think he'll be able to do the exact same thing again. I think people will be on to him. But, yeah, I mean, it was great. It was good for him to get that. 2 great goals we've seen him score in the shootout now. And like you said, he's obviously been contributing outside in regular play, too, as well. He's got, I believe, 5 points now in the 13 games that he's played, which is something we definitely didn't expect for him when he first came up. But not only does he get the points, he plays with energy, and that line has turned out to be a really effective line, effective two-way line for the Ducks and Ritchie, Vermette, and Casse. So I think it's great for what he's done so far. Obviously, winning the game in the shootout in this game and getting an assist in that game as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he trends to the end of the season.
Yeah, and speaking about that, we're talking about all these goals players coming up to play. I mean, it seems like it's the Anaheim Gulls team now because, after this game against Carolina, the Ducks put Ryan Garbutt on waivers. Later, he passed waivers and he was assigned to San Diego, as you all found out after the fact. But at the time, of course, everybody's upset, wondering what the heck's going on. He gets sent down. Of course, we had to, wait the 24 hours. Hopefully he clears those waivers, and he did, and everything. And now you look at the Ducks, bottom 6 in these last 2 games, San Jose and Ottawa, and also with Raquel coming back. Now the bottom 6, you have Ritchie, Vermette, Casse, Camarosa, Nason, and Shaw. So you got 5 out of 6 of your bottom 6 forwards from the Gulls team. I mean, it's just crazy, Eddie, to see that, almost half of the forwards are guys that, haven't played that much. And I remember there was a stat that they put out there of Vermette playing 900 plus games. And the other 5, forwards only play 100 something. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's something we talked about in the beginning of the season that we would need to see, though. We talked about how they didn't really they didn't really acquire too many guys in the offseason other than obviously Vermette. And, we needed guys to step up and play. Nason was one guy we talked about. He finally has seemed to establish himself on that fourth line. Camarosa, obviously, we talked about him because of the great camp that he had. Ritchie needed to step up. And now acquiring Logan Shaw, he's played an okay job, but he's provided energy on that fourth line. And then obviously Cache as well. Just all those guys have come out and done well and earned a spot on this roster. And that's something they've needed because they didn't have those additions in the offseason. And obviously Theodore has come up and he's played really well as late. His offense has finally started to get going. He's got 3 assists in his last 2 games. So it's great to see those guys get going because it's something they're going to need if they're not going to continue to the playoffs without making any big moves to acquire a top 6 forward.
Yeah, and we'll get to that a little bit later in the fan questions. But we do have one question about Garbutt we'll kind of take now. And Melissa asks, why did they put Garbutt on waivers? Which I think was the message I got 500 times over when it happened that day. And what do you think about this move? I mean, the Ducks, they saved a little bit of money, $900,000 as it was reported out there because, Dallas is still paying part of his deal from, going back with Chicago and all that stuff. But what do you think? Do you think it's these younger guys beating him out, playing better? What's your take on why they sent him down?
I think they were just impressed with how that line gelled. I mean, he's been playing on the fourth line for the whole season. It's not like he's been bad. He's brought energy each game. He had 3 points, I believe, in the 27 games that he played. Not expecting him to get a lot of points, so that's not surprising there. But I think they were just happy with how Nason and Camarosa and Shaw played together for the one game that they played, and obviously again in San Jose. And I think that's why they're maybe a little bit delayed in sending him down. They're kind of testing it out, seeing how it worked. And from what we've seen in the 3 games that they've played together, they've brought a lot of energy. They've been able to pot a couple goals. And, I think that's the main reason he got sent down. I know it's nothing against him. I think he's played decent to this point. He played in every game that they had played, so it was a little bit surprising in that sense to see him get sent down. And obviously, a lot of people mad that Bull didn't get sent down. But
yep.
I mean, I was surprised he didn't get picked up. Usually, you see those type of players. I mean, they're valuable on teams' fourth lines. They, a guy like Garbutt will bring some energy. I'm glad he didn't. And now he'll be able to get some playing time with the Gulls. And to me, that's better than him sitting in the press box where Bull's sitting right now and not playing. At least if he can go down to the Gulls, help them play, get some confidence, and get some games under his belt. And eventually, if they decide to bring him back up, I don't know how long Logan Shaw will last on this team. I think he's the most likely guy to be up and down in the lineup. So the possibility of him coming back up, we'll definitely see him sometime in this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think part of it was the fact that these younger guys have been playing better. And like we said, it's kind of the Anaheim Gulls team now these last couple games. I think part of it too is a little bit of the cap, and we'll talk about it later as we talk about trades and whatnot. And looking forward, because they get a little bit more cap relief, and we'll talk about Nate Thompson and all those other kind of issues. We've got questions about him as well. But I agree with you. I think when the move first made, I was just like everybody else. I was like, okay, you're sending this guy through waivers. And like you mentioned, he's a great guy to pick up as a utility guy that can play on the fourth line. He can, get some goals here and there. He doesn't play terrible defense, good checker and whatnot. So I was a little concerned too. I was like, oh man, we're going to wait the next day at 9:00 and we're going to see, somebody claimed him. So I thought it was a calculated risk by Murray. And it paid off for now. But like you said, I think it's good that he's going down there and playing, because when Raquel came back, Raquel went back to the first line. Richie bumped down to the third, so it kind of bumped Garbutt out for now. But like you said, I don't think he's going to be gone completely. We're gonna have to wait and see too with Bull. Bull's been kind of pushed out too. They've both been out of it now the last couple games here. So with that, the Ducks went into the game against San Jose. Another big battle, on this point in time, they were tied a point out of first, back at this point of the season. And this was a game where, the Ducks played well and didn't play well at some points. I mean, they started out in the first period, and, Raquel comes back after a couple days off, immediately scores in the first 4 minutes. Vermette adds a goal. So everything looked great in the first period. The Ducks were rolling, 2-0. They were taking it to the Sharks. The Sharks get a late power play. Brent Burns scores just after it expires, which, we saw this happen in the Carolina game where Carolina scored late too. So Ducks carried that 2-1 edge in the second period. In the second period, they didn't quite play as well. They got out of it tied 2-2. But then the Ducks played a good third period. We finally saw Lindholm get a goal, and the Ducks really just put the clamps down on the Sharks defensively in that period, Eddie.
Yeah, and the issue is, the Sharks have been one of the worst teams in giveaways this season. They gave away the pucks 19 times in this game, but amazingly enough, the Ducks actually gave it away more. They gave it away 20 times, and I think that was their issue in this game. And normally you don't want to give away the puck more than a team who gives it away the most in the NHL. And I think
Exactly.
In that aspect, they were, it good on them for getting the win and coming back from that. The Burns goal, you can't really blame that. That wasn't really due to a giveaway, and neither really was the Kevin LeBanc goal. But that never helps. You want to have possession, especially when the Ducks win 50% of the faceoffs, or 57% of the faceoffs. They're starting with it most of the time. So that second period was a little bit tough, but I think that they did play pretty much like 20 or 19 minutes and 55 seconds of a strong first period.
Yes.
Other than Brent Burns scoring that goal, and then they came out in the third and really played strong and rewarded with Lindholm getting his first of the season. So I think it was a big win. Obviously, with the Sharks being their stiffest competition in the Pacific Division right now, is a huge 4-point game for them. And you're seeing it in the standings right now. They've got sole possession of first in the Pacific Division. Even if the Sharks win that game they have in hand, they're only tied with 35 points. So, already that was a big game for them.
Yeah, another storyline in this too that wasn't really talked about too much, but you had Martin Jones going against Bernier, so you had the former LA duel going on here, and it was a pretty good one. And Bernier came out winning this one, Eddie. Like you said, I liked the way Bernier played. Both those goals, couldn't really put him on him, and I really thought that he kept the Ducks in this game in the second period, because the second period was where San Jose did turn it on a little bit and possibly could have got a lead. So I thought that was good to see, and see Bernier and Jones battle it out.
Yeah, and Bernier needed this one too after getting blown out against Calgary and being put in there for all 8 goals of that game. So I mean, it was good for him to come back and have a good game after and rebound from that. Like you said, there was not much he could really do. You can't blame him on those 2 goals. So he had a solid game, and he's playing against a really good goalie, like you said, Martin Jones, who's been great for San Jose this season. And he was great in this game. He made a lot of key stops for them, and the Ducks were lucky to get, especially that last one. They were lucky to get that one by him. That was a little bit of a weak shot by Lindholm, and it snuck through. So a big game by both guys, and luckily in the end, Bernier was able to rebound and win it for the Ducks.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing I liked in this game is how about Camarosa? I mean, this guy, I swear, every time he gets in a fight, it's like, holy crap. I mean, you see him in this fight against Wingles, and I mean, he waves off the linesman. And it's like, no, we still got time. And then he goes and just pulverizes him. I mean, holy cow, man. Camarosa, I've just been impressed with him. I mean, Bowl gets in these fights, and yeah, whatever. But, I mean, Camarosa really knows how to handle his own. I mean, he's impressed me with not only playing offense and defense on both sides of the puck, but he is one tough dude, Eddie.
Well, that's something I didn't expect from him. He doesn't look like he's going to be the toughest guy. He's not the same. He's not as big as Bull and by any means, but I mean, from the 2 fights that he's had, he's easily won both of them, and he's impressed me. And Bull was brought in pretty much to be a tough guy and to fight. And Camarosa has outshone him in 2 fights this season that he's had. He's easily won both, and I think that's a reason we don't see him in the lineup anymore. I mean, yeah. Camarosa can come in. He's put up points. He scored in the game against Ottawa, and he's destroyed the 2 guys that he's fought this season. And the only other guys who've really fought, you've seen Bieksa fight a couple times. You've seen Manson fight, and really Manson and Camarosa, they can fight and they can put up points. And they can play a strong game both 2 ways on the ice. So I think it's great that he can do that, because you're going to eventually need a guy who can fight. But the fact that Camarosa not only is a good fighter, he manhandled the 2 guys he had, and he can do other things on the ice too, is great. It's great to have that in the Ducks lineup.
Yeah, I think he's a well-rounded player, and I think that he's definitely going to be on the lineup for, hopefully most of the rest of the season. The Ducks then, and this week, after beating San Jose, they then hosted Ottawa in the early game on Sunday. Usually those games are at 5:00 Pacific, but this one was at 1:00. And like you said, Camarosa scored in this one. And this was the Ducks' best game of the week. I mean, they just took it to the Senators in the beginning. They built the 3-1 lead. Camarosa got it started off. It was his second goal with the Ducks. Perry got another one. We got him on there as well. Finally, like we said, 2 out of 3. Even Vatanen, made an appearance in the third period. So the Ducks really took it to the Senators. I think the special teams was huge in this one. 3 out of 4 on the power play. On the penalty kill, they also killed 3 out of 4 there. And it's just a really good win for the Ducks. The Senators, second place behind Montreal. They weren't, they haven't been playing terrible, but a good all-around win out of all the 3 games. This was definitely the best by far, Eddie.
Yeah, and they took advantage of the fact that the Sens had played a game against the Kings the afternoon before. They played a 4:00 game against the Kings on the Saturday. So they took advantage in the first period. Camarosa scored early. Obviously, Zingo got one back on the power play for the Sens, but it was a big game for the power play in this game. Perry gets his first power play goal of the season. Vermette gets one, like you said, and then Vatanen as well gets one. So to go 3 for 4 in any game, you have a good chance of winning, especially with the Ducks record when scoring 3 or more goals this season. So it was a big one, too, for all lines. I mean, every line got a goal. Camarosa got one for the 4th line. Perry got one, although on the power play for the 1st line. Vermette grabbed one also on the power play. And then Ritchie grabbed one for their line as well. So just a strong game. Pretty much every Duck forward had a point except for Cogliano, and Shaw, and Nason. Theodore got another point in this game too. So I think it was, like you said, their strongest effort from the road trip, and they took all the good things that they did in Carolina in that game and took it all the bad things, and it was a really strong game for them.
Another thing that happened too in this game, we kind of talked about it before, is we saw what happened with Bernier in Calgary. Then he comes back and plays a strong game in San Jose. We saw what happened with Gibson in Carolina in that game, obviously not having his best game. Then he comes back and has a good game in Ottawa. So one good thing this week is that both goalies, had bad games, earlier last week, the beginning of this week, and then they both responded in both games, Eddie.
Yeah, it's good to see them come back, like we said, with Bernier coming back from that bad game against the Flames, and then for Gibson to come out and have he didn't get too many shots against in this game. He only faced 22 shots, but to only let in the one goal, it was a good effort from him. He was tested a couple times in this game from some dangerous sense forward, so it was important for him to rebound, like you said. He's our number one guy. He's got to have more good games than bad if the Ducks are going to expect a challenge for the Pacific Division this season. For him to get as much confidence as he can and play a good game here, it bodes well for the beginning of this road trip.
And, speaking of the goalies, Condon went in this one after going against LA, and then obviously he got pulled out and Hammond came in. Did you think that, maybe the Senators should have started Hammond instead?
I have no idea. Like, the Sens goalie situation is so unique this season because Craig Anderson's wife has cancer. You never know if he's going to be in the lineup. Right. I personally thought he was actually going to start this game, so I didn't know that Condon would go. But yeah, I am surprised that they didn't start Hammond. I know they had recently waived him, and he was up just for the fact that if Anderson couldn't play, he was up. But It is interesting to they played a game against the Kings, not 24 hours earlier. Condon didn't have a great game in that one. They lost 4-1. So I was surprised to see him go in this one. And Hammond came in and he didn't play great, but he had a better game than Condon did. So it was surprising. If he had played a great game against the Kings, it would have been more than likely. We've seen Gibson go back-to-back this season after playing a good game the game before. But the fact that they lost 4-1 and he didn't play great in that game was a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I thought it was a little bit interesting too. And what else was surprising is there was somebody sitting by the penalty box by the Senators. I don't know who that guy was. Some dorky guy drinking a beer that you may recognize, but. Usually I'm sitting high up in the 400s like everybody else. And so I surprised my wife at this game. She never really sat down by the glass. And honestly, I've only been down there a couple times. So we ended up getting some seats in the second row next to the sin bin, as I called it, the SENBIN. And I had a good time. I mean, it was kind of funny sitting there. And I learned a few things that I'll pass along with everybody. But this is kind of interesting, Eddie. I didn't realize I got there a little bit early and I sat down and, I was pushing on the glass there on the penalty box. And then I didn't realize that it moved a couple inches back and forth, which the usher promptly came over and talked to me, and nothing bad. The ushers, they're all nice there and no big deal. But I guess apparently the glass does move a little bit in the box, and if you push it, you can be booted out of the game. So that's something to keep in mind. And you also can't, and try to interact with the players. I guess that's kind of why you don't see the Vancouver Green guys anymore, Eddie. So I guess, I did take some photos, and I know everybody saw those, but you can't go too over the board down there, Eddie.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something we just, you don't really notice it's gone until you think about it. I didn't really, until you brought it up and I really thought about it, I haven't seen or heard from the Green Men in Vancouver for a long time, or like you mentioned to me, the space guy in Florida or anything like that. You just don't really notice it until then. And I mean, obviously lucky for you, didn't get kicked out in the game because it was a pretty good game. It would have been pretty bad to miss out on that.
Yeah, exactly. I ended up just taking photos, and I was messing around a little bit with Zingle because he went in there twice in the penalty box. But he was a really nice guy. He gave the kid in front of us a hockey puck, so he was really cool. So it was all good. I just took a few photos, and obviously you guys saw on the TV too. There's one where I guess I can't remember who, somebody was in the box, and I'm sitting there drinking my beer, looking over. So it was kind of funny. But that second row, I guess, is I didn't realize that was the row, because I had looked at the first row tickets, but we ended up going with that row. So that was a fun experience and a good early Christmas present for my wife. And, of course, the blowout 5-1, that helped make things better. So fun times. I mean, you'll usually see me in the 400. I probably won't be down there, too many, other games. But anyways, it was a fun time. Just wanted to pass that along so you guys know some of the rules, in case you sit down there, or if you already do sit down there, maybe you know. But anyways, with that, we're going to switch over now. We talked about all the games. We're going to get to your fan questions and talk about what's going on with the team and the players. And the first question we're going to go with, Eddie, comes from Hunter. He asks about Bieksa and why does he play so much, and why do the Ducks still use him so much, basically, on the ice and on the defense?
Well, to be fair, for the last 3 games, he's actually either played the least amount of ice time or he's been second lowest behind Shea Theodore. So he hasn't really played that much. The most he's played is just over 17 minutes in the last 3 games. He's been playing on that bottom pairing, which I think suits him. He shouldn't be playing 18, 19, 20 minutes a game. It's just not. He's just not that guy anymore like he was in Vancouver. He doesn't have the legs to do that anymore. The game's a lot faster than it used to be. So I don't really think he's really being played that much. I mean, you have to play him. You can't rely on Fowler and Lindholm and Vatanen to play like 30 minutes a night. You've got to play him. And I think he's been okay lately. I mean, you can't expect too much out from him. I know we've all been harsh on him this season, and at times he's deserved it. But lately he's gotten better. And really the reason he's in the lineup is because you need a guy like that on your team. You mentioned this to me before. There's not too many guys in the Ducks lineup that can hit. They're relatively small in the way that they play on the blue line. Fowler's not going to lay anybody out, really. Vatanen, he does hit people, but he's not an overly big guy. Theodore as well, he's not really going out there to hit anybody. The real 2 big guys you have are Manson and Bieksa, and then Lindholm eventually will lay the body on some guys as well. But he's in there to be that solid guy, and that's why Stoner is in there. And when we see him come back, he might check in for probably Theodore, unfortunately. But those are the reasons why those guys are there. And I'm fine with him playing 15, 16, 17 minutes a night. He's not even getting penalty kill time. Most of that is going to Fowler, Vatanen, Lindholm, and Manson. So, as long as he's out there just for 5-on-5, he's playing a strong defensive game, I'm fine with him being on the ice.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, as long as he's been doing like he has the last few games, and like you said, he's not playing as much time. The other issue, too, is, Stoner's been out for a little while now. Holzer hasn't played as much either. So, the Ducks, you can't go with too many two-way defensemen. I mean, yeah, it may sound fun, but I mean, you look at the Ducks, 6 guys that they're playing these last few games. You've got 4 two-way defensemen and 2 stay at home. Me personally, the ideal situation is 3 of each. I mean, that doesn't always work out, obviously. But with the Ducks, they're going to have at least 2, and maybe check Stoner back in when he gets healthy, or Holzer against some of the bigger teams. But like you said, I agree. I think he's doing fine for now. And, there's nothing really to do to change it. I mean, I know he's not everybody's favorite player, but, I mean, if you look at the last couple games, he hasn't been making major mistakes. He's been playing solid. As long as he hits guys and plays that same role and the third pairing role, I think we'll be okay. So with that, we have another question here. This one's about Nate Thompson from Tasha. She asks, when Nate Thompson comes back, do we anticipate him going on to the 4th line? Which is a great question, especially because we've been talking about, the Anaheim Gulls, quote unquote, team now that we've, kind of got with all these young guys playing on the 3rd and 4th line. I think he would, Eddie. I think when Nate Thompson is healthy and ready to go, you see him posting these videos and photos of himself on Instagram and social media of him working out and stuff like that. Obviously, he's been working hard to come back. He was even at the game the other night, before he could take photos and stuff. So he's hanging around. I think that when he comes back, he will play that 4th line. I think that's the role that he's going to play. I mean, it's going to be tough because you're going to have to send someone down. And I don't know. It might be maybe Shaw. You mentioned that earlier. It might be the one that goes down, or maybe Nason. I don't know. It's going to be somewhere in there. I mean, I don't see them sending Casse or Cramarosa down. Those 2 have been playing outstanding, Eddie. So I think that's kind of where they're at.
Yeah, and the fact that the top 3 lines have kind of settled themselves out and established who's going to be on those lines right now, it kind of does just check in on that 4th line. That's where we kind of expected him to. We talked about maybe at the beginning of the season, maybe Raquel playing center, but he's kind of settled in on the wing, on Getzlaf and Perry's wing right now. So Yeah, I think there's only really two spots that he can take right now, and it's probably either Nason or Logan Shaw, and I think that depends on how well both of those guys are playing by the time he comes back. And we mentioned that we might eventually see Garbutt come back too eventually, so I mean, you could eventually see a fourth line where it's Cramarosa, Thompson, and Garbutt, and that's not bad either. I mean, you've got two spots where you can make changes right now, which is good. And obviously, Cramarosa, Nathan, and Shaw are playing well right now. But by the time Thompson's ready to come back, I think he definitely has a lock in on that fourth line. And they're already a scary team up the middle. They're the top face-off team in the league. And then you bring in another guy who can win at least 50% of the draws. They're going to get even scarier down the middle with him back.
And this whole thing with Thompson coming back, obviously the salary cap issues. We don't have an update under Prey still, but how that's going to work out. But the Ducks are going to have to do something, and we've got tons of questions about trades and players coming back and what they're going to do. We have Richard asks about Colorado, which you and I talked about this during the week, and I mentioned it in the article when Garbutt went down on waivers and whatnot, was assigned to San Diego. I think that's one of the teams that we could look at, Eddie. I mean, I know that Duchesne's name has come up before, Landeskog's name has come up before. What do you think? When Nate Thompson comes back, the Ducks try to make a move because of the salary cap issues. Do you look at Colorado and some of the players there as a potential, or maybe they go shopping somewhere else?
Yeah, it's a weird situation with the Ducks. I mean, when Nate Thompson comes back, I don't know exactly if we're like at the beginning of the season. We knew that when he would come back, they might not be able to have the cap space to make any moves because they're on the injured reserve with the call ups and assignments to San Diego. I'm not sure if they are still actually under or over the cap when he comes back, but it'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, with Colorado in that respect to the question, I think they just got thrashed 10-1 by Montreal. And they're on the verge of probably making some kind of big move there to shake up their lineup. I mean, a lot of the blame went on Patrick Wall when he left, and a lot of people thought that this team was finally going to turn it around and play really, really well this year, but they're actually sitting tied for the bottom with the Arizona Coyotes right now. They can't score any goals this season. Defensively, they haven't been great. Goaltending has been, barring that game that they had against Toronto where Varlamov stopped 51 shots, they haven't been that great this season. So you look at everybody on that team possibly being available other than Nathan MacKinnon.
Right.
And it's you look at guys on that team like Matt Duchene, you look at Gabriel Landeskog, Drew McGinley's name has actually come up in the last few days of him possibly going to a team that's going to be a contender. So you look at all those guys as possible options. Now they all carry heavy cap hits. Again, carries over $5 million. Duchene it's got to be at least over $6 million. Landeskog's probably up in that range as well. So making any move for the Ducks is going to be difficult. If you see any of those guys come over, maybe not in Ginla's case. In Ginla's case, they would probably have to retain some cap. But for either Duchene or Landeskog, you would expect the Ducks to probably either send Fowler or Vatanen back the other way. And with the way they're playing right now, you just don't. I don't know if that could happen. We know that the expansion draft is coming up, and you only can protect 3 defensemen, and that kind of leaves Manson the odd man out right now. But we heard these kind of rumors with when Fleury was talked about in Pittsburgh. You could always trade the Las Vegas franchise a pick to not pick Josh Manson, and that's still an option. And they are a new team. And they're obviously looking for younger guys, but Vermette is still an option for them, and BX is still an option for them. And really, for the Ducks, it all depends on what they're going to do. I think if you can get one of those guys, it might be worth moving, say, a guy like Vatanen because you have Montour, who kind of plays a similar role, almost ready to play in the NHL. But I also think it depends on if he gets any time this season to see how ready he is and if he can make an immediate impact. If he comes up and he plays amazing, and he plays at a similar level to what Vatanen can do, then they have a really valuable trade piece that they can move, and they can avoid any issues come expansion draft. But it's tough to say what they're going to do right now, and the Ducks won't be the only team in on players in Colorado. The Ottawa Senators, they've always been in on Duchene, and they're looking for a top center, so they'll be in hot. And I don't think the Ducks, unless they move Fowler or Vatanen, have the assets to compete with some of these other teams right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know if they will make some kind of a deal with Colorado. I think it's a little bit difficult too. Like you said, the cap hits are way too huge
Hmm.
for some of these players that the names have been thrown around out there that you've been mentioning and that other people have seen as well. So I do think if you go back and we just focus on the Ducks, and Garrett asked this question you brought up too. He talks about, okay, well, the draft's coming up. We got to try and get out of the cap space. And Garrett says, would you trade Botnan or Fowler? And I think it's a very difficult question. Of course, over the summertime, everybody was like, "Oh, Fowler, he's the one. He's going to be gone." Yada yada yada. Then the season starts and he's exploded, and he's been the best Ducks defenseman by far. I mean, as far as scoring, penalty killing, everything, he's been doing a great job. Not to say Vatanen hasn't been playing well, but Vatanen hasn't done as well. And you've got two guys with, contracts, 4 or 5 million range that you can, kind of work with. So I think those are the two that you would have to look at. I mean, if you look at the other defensemen, obviously Stoner was sent down. Nobody picked him up. The Ducks have always been pretty big on keeping Hampus Lindholm long term, and obviously they got that deal done. I mean, I know they got the Botman one done too. But that's kind of where you're at. And, Dupre is unfortunately, he's not doing well either. So I don't see him getting moved out. Bieksa has this no movement clause. So to me, it really comes down to these two guys. If the Ducks are going to trade someone to get back under the cap. I mean, the only other thing I could see is maybe if they're able to send, some of the Gulls players down, make enough room for Thompson to come back. And then if Dupre is still out, then maybe they just stay under there if he stays under the long-term injury reserve. But either way, you would think that they would move one or the other. And I think you're right. If they go with Botnan, you're able to bring up Montour, and Montour fills that similar role. I think that's the direction they would head. But man, Eddie, it's a really tough decision.
Yeah, it's because you don't see something like this come that often, and it creates a lot of different avenues. Like when I've heard that you could actually trade the Vegas team compensation to not pick one of your players, it opens up a whole new avenue that the Ducks could take. Now, obviously, they're going to go the route of 7 forwards, I think 3 defensemen and a goalie.
Yeah.
They're going to have to protect Vatanen, Fowler, and Lindholm if no trades are made, and obviously that exposes Manson. That creates the possibility, like I said, to maybe trade them a compensation pick to not take Manson. Now, obviously, they don't have to take that, and if they're really high on Manson, they would take him. And I, for one, wouldn't want to lose him for free. But it all depends on what they're going to do. And really, to answer the question, who would I rather move for a top left wing? I think at the beginning of the season, we all said Fowler just because that seemed like the most likely option. And obviously with Vatanen signing his new contract and everything like that. But look at how well Montour has played for the Gulls this season, how similar of a player he is to Vatanen. The fact that he can quarterback a power play. I would think he's the most likely one to go, but it's still a tough trade to pull off because if you're looking to go deep in the playoffs, you would have to know that Montour is ready to fill that role. I think you would have to know that. I think Bob Murray and Randy Carlyle would have to know that he's ready or somebody is ready to come up and fill that role because you trade away Vaughn and yes, you get a great goal scorer, top 6 goal scorer to come in, but you lose that top 4 defenseman that you don't have anybody to replace them with. I mean, Stoner comes in and Bieksa pushes up in the lineup. That makes you significantly weaker on the back end, especially moving the puck up the ice. So I think the only way he gets moved, or really anybody gets moved right now, is Montour would have to come up and prove that he's ready to play in the NHL. And if we see him come up, after the Christmas break, I think that then we could start talking about this and sparking some rumors a little bit more. But I hope that he gets a chance, and if he comes up and plays well, then that will change things for the Ducks for sure.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think right now the Ducks are still going to be in the holding pattern. Obviously, the trade deadline's a little bit away still. We still got a couple months here, but with Garbutt going down, and then all these other rumors coming out of Colorado. We've talked about other teams before, Toronto, Detroit, things like that. Those are mentioned in the article, and there's several articles that we've talked about those that have been kind of going on and on and on for the last couple of months. Is where the Ducks are at. But I think the Ducks are going to stay in this holding pattern. I don't think they're going to do anything, in the next little while. I know I mentioned in the article that the scouts were at some of the games back east looking at some of the teams and stuff, but everybody's doing that. They're all looking at it now. It's December. Next it's going to be January. That's what all the teams do. They look around. I don't think there's anything that's going to happen right away or anything like that. But I do think that some other players that could come up is, maybe Garbutt. Maybe Garbutt does get moved too. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with some of these younger guys, and if they keep playing the way that they are, it's really going to dictate, I think, what Murray and the Ducks are going to do in 2 months, Eddie.
Yeah, and like you said, they're looking at options right now, but they're in no hurry to do anything. You've got. It's an interesting year. We've mentioned this multiple times. I mean, I just rambled on for about 5 minutes saying, "Oh, it's an interesting year because of the expansion draft," but it really is. You don't see this happen that often. It adds a whole new element to the trade deadline and to decisions that you have to make as the general manager. So. It all depends on how guys play. Like you said, if some of the young guys play well, if Kase has been a real surprise for the Ducks this year. Cramarosa has been great for them. Richie stepped up like we hoped he would. He, like you said, he picked up his 7th goal in the game against Ottawa, and all those young guys have stepped up so far. Nason and Shaw have played well in the fourth line so far. If they can all continue to play well, the Ducks aren't really rushed into making that top 6 deal because their top 6 is pretty much already established right now. You've got Raquel, Getzlaff, and Perry. You're not going to break up Cogliano, Kessler, and Silverberg, even though Cogliano's not playing great offensively. You've got Kessler with 25 points in 29 games. You've got Silverberg playing a lot better this season. Cogliano doesn't need to score those goals. And then you've got a third line with Vermette, Cachet, and Richie that you never really expected anything to come from that line, but it's been one of the Ducks' best lines as of late. Right now they don't need to make a deal. The expansion draft kind of throws a wrench in that. If they think they're going to lose Manson, it'll be interesting to see what kind of, if they're forced to make a deal. But right now, we're looking at how the team is playing right now and how the lines have kind of gelled and created some chemistry. I don't think they're really in any hurry.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that kind of goes with another question, and probably the last question we'll take here that, Richard also asked this one too, is, the Ducks have looked good. They've won the last 3 games. And, obviously we've broken down the games as we usually do, but he asked, what can they do better? To me, I think the biggest thing, and this was kind of the problem last year, was the passing, Eddie. And that was really evident in the Carolina game. The Ducks couldn't get consecutive passes and getting things going. You saw a little bit of that in the second period against San Jose, and then obviously in the Ottawa game, that wasn't even an issue. So to me, that's the thing that I've seen, and then obviously the defense in a couple of those games, of course, the Calgary game, the Carolina game, the defense has been a little bit suspect in those games. But, I think the Ducks are trending in the right direction. I mean, you can't complain. They're in first place. They're winning the games. They're even winning games that they necessarily shouldn't have been winning, like the Carolina one. So I think they're doing well. I think they just need to fine-tune a few little things here and there, and I think they'll be pretty good.
Yeah, everything seemed to click as of late. This is their second 3-game winning streak, I think, so far this season. So it's nice to get those 3 wins at home before you go on a 6-game road trip. So I think they're trending in the right direction. I think, like you said, the quick outs and the passing can be improved on. They had a little bit issue with that in the Carolina game where there was 2 breakaway goals and some giveaways there where their passing wasn't so great. And I think the one other thing they can really work on right now is the penalty kill. And it was something, we didn't think we'd be saying because it was so great last year, but it's 21st in the NHL right now. They're 9th in goals per game, 10th in goals against per game. Their power play is 3rd in the league, so everything's going well for those, but the penalty kill is, it's not too great right now. So I think that's something they can improve on. It doesn't have to be top 10, but at least get it in the top half of the league, and I think that will definitely help them.
Yeah, I agree. And the Ducks are going to take this 3-game winning streak on the road, and this week they're going to play Dallas, Boston, and Detroit. And it should be interesting. I think the Ducks can, I think they can keep this winning streak going against all these teams, Eddie. I mean, if you look at Dallas, we kind of talked about how they've been having some, defensive issues before the show. You and I were discussing this, and I'm looking at the goalies situation here, and they're still, they have Lehtinen and Niemi, and they're still going back and forth. You got Lehtinen with 19 games, you got Niemi with 14 games. It's kind of like the Anderson Gibson thing of last year for the Ducks. They go back and forth with these goalies. We remember this was an issue for them last year, especially in the playoffs. But this is a team, starting this road trip. This is one I think the Ducks can win. Dallas isn't quite the same team as they were last year.
Yeah, this is a team that would score goals for fun last year. And this year they're still scoring, but they're sitting 19th in goals per game. And last year their issue was defense. That was one of their main issues last year. But the fact that they scored so many goals, it didn't matter. But now it's caught up to them. And this is something we knew would eventually happen with them. But I thought they were a good enough team that they would still be in the top half of the league. But right now they're sitting in 24th. They're last in goals against per game. Their penalty kill is in the bottom three, and they're hovering below the middle mark for power play and goals per game. Spezza struggling. Sagan and Banner are still playing well for them, but Klingberg struggling for them. Their goaltending is just awful. I mean, Letton's sitting under 900 in save percentage. Niemi's just over. They're both hovering around or over 3 goals against per game. So, I mean, at times they can look like last year's stars, so you can't take them for granted. But this is a team that gives you a lot of chances. They play at high speed, and we've seen that with the games that the Ducks have played against them this season. So they need to come out and play with the energy that they've played in the last 3 games and play a tight defensive game, and the goals will come. I mean, against a team like Dallas and the way they've been playing this year with the holes they have defensively, you'll get chances. They just have to bury them.
Yeah, and after the Dallas game, the Ducks are going to then head to Boston and take on the Bruins, which they've been playing 500 hockey lately. They're 4-4-2 in their last 10. Tuukka Rask has been doing pretty well for them. I mean, 1.85 goals against, 930 save percentage. So he's been doing well. Of course, some former Ducks on this team. Hudobin's the backup, and obviously Bolesky, who hasn't been doing too great this year. I mean, he's only got a couple goals. So. This is still another one I think the Ducks can pull out, Eddie. They've got a few guys that are scoring goals, but Boston's just behind Ottawa in the standings, so they're not playing terrible. They're a couple games over 500, but this is definitely another winnable game for the Ducks.
Well, the good thing about this game is Boston defensively is a very good team. Tuukka Rask has been their guy this season. Their goal scoring is a little bit suspect, other than David Pastrnak, who's been unbelievable. He has 18 goals so far this season. And then you've got Brad Marchand and David Krejci, who've been their main go-to offense guys this year. Bergeron's actually struggled. He only has 8 points so far in 26 games. But defensively, they're very strong. But the way the schedule works out, they actually play Pittsburgh the day before they play us. They play Pittsburgh on the Wednesday, and then they play us on the Thursday. And more than likely, you would expect Rask to go against Pittsburgh, being an Eastern Conference team. They're in the same conference. It's a tougher opponent essentially for them. So we're looking at getting either one of Khudobin, McIntyre, or Malcolm Subban if he plays. Most likely Khudobin if he's healthy, which is a huge boost for the Ducks. Khudobin is 1-4 this season with a 3 goals against average. So if we can get Khudobin, I think it's a winnable game. It is a winnable game no matter what. But I mean, anytime you can avoid Tuukka Rask, especially the way he's playing this season, it's a big advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I think that game, is going to be probably a tight one too. Probably a 1 or 2 goal affair, and the Ducks will then play Detroit after that. And I think Detroit might be the same way too. I mean, their goalies haven't been slouches either. You got Howard at 1.68. You've had Mrazek with 2.29. They've got a little bit of balanced scoring. I mean, Zetterberg's got 6 goals, Nielsen's got 6 goals. And Mike Green as well, and then Larkin's got 9. So, I mean, they've been coming through with, a balanced attack, but another team that, that hasn't been playing all that great. So, I think the Ducks can, really win this one in all 3 of these.
Yeah, and it's another team who, like the Stars, is struggling compared to how they played last year. They're not getting a lot of offense from guys who scored for them last year. I mean, Nyquist and Tatar took a step down last year, and they've taken another step down this year, especially Tatar, who we talked about at length in the offseason, only has 11 points for them so far. Nyquist has 15, and Larkin only has 11, albeit 9 of his 11 being goals. But those are guys they expected to step up with losing Pavel Datsyuk. And really, Zetterberg has been their best player this season, and he only has 20 points in 29 games. So they've struggled in the goal-scoring aspect. Their goalies have been decent for them. Howard's been amazing for them in the 14 games that he's played. Mrazek's been okay for them. But I think it's a game they should win. Detroit's struggling this season. They're struggling to move on from Pavel Datsyuk, which of course is a big loss for them. Anytime you lose a player of his caliber, it's difficult to move on. And I think these 3 games, normally you look at last season, you'd be saying this is a really, really tough start to the road trip. But with the way these 3 teams are playing, these are games that the Ducks should win, especially with the way the Ducks are playing right now. They're playing with a lot of speed, a lot of energy, and these are teams who haven't been able to score goals this season. So I think if the Ducks can get ahead early, I think they'll be good in each of these games.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that the big key too, and we've kind of been the theme of this whole show, is in the bottom 6 for the Ducks. You look at the goals players that have come and played for this team, and the way that they have stepped up. Some, as recent as this week, and some for a few weeks now in the season. It's going to be huge for this team moving forward. Beyond just this road trip and the rest of the season. It's something that you mentioned too. We talked about this in the summer after all the moves were done, and the Ducks didn't get that big forward that we had talked about and everybody had talked about. They're going to rely on these guys, and you have to be happy if you're a Ducks fan. I mean, you have Kase, Camarosa, Nason, Shaw. They're all coming up. They're playing well. Richie's improved this year. Raquel is just going out of his mind. I mean, obviously he's outside of the goals group, but he's just been playing outstanding. So this team, it's looking up. It's trending up, and it's been a good week. I think we're going to see some more good weeks. We're going to see them winning some more games. And it's going to be a good battle. I said this before. I don't care about first in the Pacific. I mean, if they get it, great. But I just want them to continue with the way that they're starting to kind of get together and gel together, especially with all these young guys, Eddie.
Yeah, and one thing we talked about for the last few podcasts and that we got to ask over and over again was when are they going to find consistency? And it wasn't as much as consistency with winning games and losing games and winning 3 in a row or whatever like that. It was more so we saw it as consistency within the lineup and finding, like you said, being able to gel together and find cohesiveness in the lineup. And that's something they've finally been able to do. They've got Raquel, who's fit in on that first line with Getzlaf and Perry, the ever-present Cogliano, Kessler, Silfverberg line, and then obviously the fact that Richie, Vermette, and Kase have been able to play so good together. I think that's the key to their success so far, and definitely the key to their success in the upcoming games before the Christmas break and beyond from there. You have to be able to go out and be confident that you can play the same lineup and not have to change things up. Like, how many times last year did we say, oh, we don't know who's going to be on whose line this year? And that's more of a Bruce Boudreau thing more than anything. But we didn't know if Perry was going to be on the same line as Getzlaf. We didn't know. The only thing we knew was Cogliano, Kessler, and Silfverberg would be together pretty much any night. The fact that we can say that about three lines now is very comforting, and it's nice to see that they're able to finally work out those early, I don't know how to say it, the early rumbles they had in the lineup, and that they can finally, get it going and have the same lineup every night.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about this on the podcast the seasons before too. This is a key for any team when you can get your lines together. You don't necessarily have to have 4 lines that are all ironed out and you know who's who every night. But when you can get 2, that's good. I mean, it works out. It's fine. You're going to do some damage. But when you can get 3, that's really good. I mean, and that's where the Ducks are at right now. You've got the top 3 ready to roll. You've got the 4th line where you can, interchange people, move people around and whatnot. You have to like the consistency now as far as the line mates and the pairings. The D pairings have been matched up too. Hopefully, obviously, get everybody healthy. We're waiting for a few people to come back, like we talked about. But other than that, this team is doing well. They're looking good, and I look forward to this road trip. And I think the Ducks will do well. And with that, we'll come back halfway through the road trip. We'll talk about what's going on, and then obviously talk about the second half of the road trip. So stay tuned for that, and let's go Ducks.